Hello and welcome to another video review. So this is going to be different than my Worst of Netflix original series in the fact that, well, I mean, it's not a Netflix original movie. Instead, this series is going to be just me reviewing movies that I've enjoyed or just movies that catch my interest. For today's video, we're doing Tokyo Gore Police, which is a crazy movie. It is a Japanese action splatter movie. So it's very schlocky. It's directed and written by Yoshihiro Nishimura. Anyone who doesn't know who he is, he's basically kind of considered the Tom Savini of Japan. He's done movies like, obviously, Tokyo Gore Police, Vampire Girl vs. Frankenstein Girl, Mutant Girl Squad, Hell Driver. Those last two I'll probably do a review for at some point, especially Hell Driver, because Hell Driver was a freaking wild ride. That movie was really crazy. He mostly does special effects, though. He's done stuff for like Dead Sushi, Zombie Ass Toilet of the Dead, Dead Ball, Yakuza Weapon. Yakuza Weapon might get a review too. That movie's also pretty crazy. Karate Robo, Zaborga. He's also done Gothic and Lolita Psycho, as well as Suicide Club. That might be the most well-known thing that he's done on. The Machine Girl. Machine Girl also probably get a review done at some point because that movie was also really crazy and I freaking loved it. But yeah, basically schlocky horror comedies. I don't even want to necessarily say horror because a lot of them aren't really scary at all. They're basically action splatter fests. So you take action movies, you put in a lot of over-the-top gore that you usually see in B horror movies, and you combine them. And that's pretty much what you get from this guy. That's what you get from Yoshihiro Nishimura. And I love it. I love that kind of stuff. It's nothing that's going to win any awards. It's all really low budget stuff. But it is entertaining as hell just for how crazy and weird it gets. I mean, in Hell Driver alone, there's a scene where a bunch of zombies basically form together to create a zombie car that actually drives and it chases our hero. Like, that's how weird it freaking is. There's even like a scene where a bunch of zombies get together to form a giant zombie airplane and they kamikaze their enemies. It's weird. So expect a lot of weirdness out of this movie. But yeah, this is Tokyo Gore Police and the summary. Tokyo, the future. A samurai sword-wielding cop in a privatized police force leads her squad on a mission to destroy an army of cyborg human hybrids. Yeah, just by that premise alone, you can pretty much understand what you're getting with this. So without further delay, let's just get right into it. So like all my other movie reviews, I will not be showing clips, but I will be showing screen grabs. Just because clips, I'll probably get flagged and stuff, especially with the Japanese stuff. Japan goes pretty crazy when it comes to flagging a lot of stuff. That's why you guys haven't really seen much manga things out of me lately. It's because of that. So yeah, I'm just going to be doing some screen grabs, but I will be going through everything in this movie. And yeah, if you guys are interested in watching it yourself, you can watch it for free on Tubi. There'll be ads like every once in a while. This is something you got to deal with when watching Tubi, but I mean, anyone who uses YouTube without ad blockers, you kind of already are familiar with this. All right, so before I get into the movie, I should probably mention this. This movie is really messed up. Like, if you couldn't have guessed by the title, there is a bunch of gore and violence and some messed up visuals to go along with it. And I want to not get this video age restricted. It probably will end up being that in the end. And I know some of you may be thinking, but Pirate, that's the best part of the movie. You have to show it. Well, if you guys want to see that, then you should go watch the movie yourself, which, again, I recommend doing because it is free, so you have no excuse. So yeah, some of this stuff is probably going to slip through, but I'm going to do my best. But yeah, just be wary that if you're easily squeamish, there's going to be, there's a lot of gory visuals in this. But again, I'll do my best to try to work around it, but we'll see how that goes. So let's dive right into the movie. We start off in a near future Japan, and this Japan reminds me very much of RoboCop meets Mad Max. And I say this because very militarized. There's a lot of satire to go along with that. which is why it kind of reminds me of RoboCop and a little bit of Starship Troopers in that regard. And then the Mad Max is because there's nothing beautiful about this. Like, even the police station is like an abandoned warehouse. So kind of like in the original Mad Max, like everything is just dilapidated and just, this is an ugly future that no one wants to be a part of. Yeah, in this future, violence and gore are kind of commonplace. What I mean by that is, in this future, the police has been privatized, and we have almost over the top that becomes a satire, like commercials for the police, where we will see there's one scene where there's these little boys and they're playing soccer, and this madman shows up and he shoots the head off of one of this kid. Like he shoots the kid in the head and his head just explodes into gory paste. And before he can open fire on the rest of the kids, a bunch of these private police officers show up and they shoot the hell out of this guy and they slice off his head. And then they turn to the boys and they offer him, the surviving boys, papers to join the police force. And then they turn to the camera and they give a thumbs up. And then it cuts to the boys playing soccer with the killer's decapitated head. There's another scene where there's this guy and he's strung up, and there's this family in their kitchen, and they're basically using like a Wii remote with a fake katana on it, and they're slicing at the TV. And every time they slice at the TV, the man who's strung up somewhere is getting sliced in the exact spot. And what this is remote execution. So basically, it turns out that this family, their daughter was killed by this guy, and so now they get to bring out justice by the comfort of their own home. Basically, they get to torture this guy and then kill him whenever they want through remote execution. There's another scene where our main character is on the subway and she sees an ad for razor blades, and these are the new blades that are used to slice your wrist. And they come in 3 different colors. Like, you get commercials like this, just strung out throughout the entire movie. Some of them kind of pop out of nowhere, and they're kind of, I don't know. I would have liked it better if they like had fitted in somehow, because it just kind of just pops up like in between scenes, like usually in between transitions as we're cutting from like what the main character is doing to like another character. We'll get like a splice of one of these over the top commercials, and it can just be kind of disorienting. This is basically the world we live in. And in this world, there are these creatures called engineers. And engineers are humans that have been infected with this quote-unquote virus. It's basically, there's this man, and he's called the Key Man. And the reason he's called the Key Man is because there is these tumors in the shape of a key, and Key Man puts these keys inside people's bodies. And then it basically turns them into crazy, violent maniacs. And these violent maniacs become almost indestructible. Like, if you slice off their arm will grow back into some kind of weapon. The only way to kill them is to cut out the key tumor that's inside of them. And our main character, her name is Ruka, and she is a engineer hunter. But when we first see her, we see her as a small little girl, and her father is a old-fashioned police officer. He's like, he's not part of the private military or anything like that. He's a good guy, and he's trying to keep the police from being privatized. And he sees his daughter, and he gives her a salute, and all of a sudden his head explodes. And then we cut to the present day, where we see Ruka as a police officer of this private police force, and she's part of a special squad called the Engineer Hunters, and her job is to hunt down the engineers. We have one engineer that's held up inside this building. He has kidnapped a woman, and he's dragged her in there, and this guy is slicing off pieces of this woman and eating it. And Ruka shows up in her squad car. She's camped outside the building, and she's just kind of just staring into space. And then the rest of her squad rushes in to go fight this guy. And as they're doing that, Ruka pulls out a blade, and she starts slicing at her wrist. So she has a problem with cutting herself. And the squad go inside. They find the engineer, and he has a chainsaw. And when they reach his destination, he's gone. Like, they can't find him. And all of a sudden he appears behind them with the chainsaw, and he starts slicing all these guys. So he's cutting through the squad members. The squad members start riddling him with bullets, and he takes all these shots. He takes so many shots to the arm that his arm gets blown off, and then all of a sudden he grows a mutated arm with a chainsaw attached. So now he has a chainsaw arm, and he starts using the chainsaw arm he actually can use it as a projectile. Like, he launches the chainsaw arm, and the chainsaw arm is still connected to his body by like veins. So he's launching it at people, slicing them, and then pulling it back to him. It's really crazy and over the top. And this is not even touching the surface of this movie of how crazy it gets. So yeah, eventually Ruka gets over whatever is bothering her, and she steps out and she looks up and she notices that, okay, the engineers are way up on the top building. I don't know if she's just too lazy, if she wants to make a badass interest, but she's like, I'm not climbing up all these steps to get up there. So instead, she grabs a rocket launcher, pulls it out, she aims it at the building, and it looks like she's going to shoot at the building and hit the engineer man. But that would actually also kill her squad members. But instead, she aims the rocket at the ground at her feet, pulls the trigger, and basically explodes herself up into the air. So yeah, she rocket launches herself into the air, and she lands on top of some beams above the engineer. And then she pulls out her sword and she starts fighting the engineer. And they start, battling each other, sword against chainsaw. And eventually she grabs the chainsaw that the engineer originally had, the one still attached to his blown off arm. And she, chucks the arm off, grabs the chainsaw, and then they start chainsaw dueling. And eventually she overpowers him and she slices his face into a bunch of pieces, and then grabs her sword and slices him in half, and blood squirts everywhere, and she's able to get the key out. And that's how this engineer is dead. And then we cut to her in the police station, which I said is basically just this dilapidated warehouse. And during this, she sees I want to say the guy who works as like the autopsy, and he's cutting into this engineer. And he's basically explaining to the audience about what engineers are and the key tumors and the only way to stop them and yada, yada, yada. So the police commissioner, he tells Ruka, good job. You were great. Another job well done on executing an engineer. And then we get a little bit more backstory where we find out that after the death of Ruka's father, the police commissioner took Ruka in and raised her as if she were his own daughter, and basically trained her, and that's why she eventually joined the force and became really good and stuff like that. And Ruka has only one person that she can really turn to. It's this, I don't know if they ever actually give her a name, but she works at a bar. She's a bar owner, and she's the only one that's, like helps Ruka. We get like a flashback where Ruka is seen, basically she her arm is bleeding. This is when she's like a teenager because she has cut herself. And these two boys show up and they're kind of like asking her if she's okay. But they're doing it in a way where it looks like they might be getting aroused by the fact that she has cut herself, and they might be doing more to her. Or they look like they're going to try to do more to her. When the bar owner shows up and tells them to beat it, and then she takes the girl in and helps bandage Ruka and stuff. So since then they've kind of developed this friendship. Yeah, we get a moment where Ruka gets a call that there's some kind of emergency at the police station. Police show up immediately, so she shows up, and the alarm is going off. The alarm lights is going off. So she's like, all right, something is going down. So she rushes in with her sword drawn, and she sees this samurai-looking dude. He's just a silhouette, and he's walking something. At first, it looks like it could be a dog, but then it turns out it's actually an amputated person in a gimp suit. So a person with their arms and legs amputated. They have like this weird gimp mask, and they have a collar with they have like a leash, and this guy is basically walking this amputated gimp. And then right when Ruka is about to attack, the lights show up, and it turns out that it's the police commissioner, and all these other police officers show up, and they basically surprise her with a birthday cake. So yeah, the police are really weird as well. So yeah, they basically congratulate her and stuff like that, and they get information that there is that the key man is going after prostitutes. And basically there's this woman who she is a pimp, and she is in this bathroom, getting she's in a public bathroom, and she's like, touching up her makeup or whatever. And the key man shows up and stabs all these like pipes into her body, and then drains her blood out into these little canisters. And then by the time that the police show up, this woman is stuffed inside a box. Like her body has been cut and dissected, so she fits into this small cardboard box, and all of her blood containers are surrounding her. So yeah, really disturbing and messed up, but they kind of get a clue like, okay, so now this key man is going after prostitutes. So Ruka dresses up as a prostitute to try to lure him out. She gets onto a subway, and that's when we see one of the subway commercials. And during the subway, we get this young man who basically is feeling up Ruka's behind. And Ruka grabs his arm, pulls him out of the subway, and he's like begging, like, it wasn't me, it wasn't me. Obviously it was. And he's just begging her, like, you're hurting me, please don't do anything. And she drags him into a isolated area, and then she slices off his arms. And as he's like bleeding, she walks away, and she's like, molestation is a felony. So that's why he's getting his punishment. So because he touched her butt, she slices off both of his arms. And yeah, so she goes back into the subway, and she falls asleep, and she has another nightmare of her dad getting shot in front of her. And when she wakes up, she sees this weird looking guy standing in front of her, and he has like these key scars on his face. And she's like, oh, this is the key man. And the guy like leaves the subway train, leaves the subway, and she chases after him. And he leads her down into this like underground tunnel, and we get a fight scene. So she's fighting him with her sword that she has hidden inside a cane. And during this fight, she slices him across the face, basically dissects his head in half. Like she basically turns his head into a Pez dispenser, and he's still alive. Like she just like slices him, and he stares at her, and he grabs his head, and he pulls his head up, and blood starts squirting everywhere. Blood starts squirting all over her, and she's like covering her eyes to shield herself from all this blood. And what happens is he literally rips off the top of his head and discards it. And because of the fact that he's an engineer himself, and as has been stated earlier, anytime an engineer has a part of their body cut off or blown off or anything, it grows back into a weapon. So the top of his head grows back, and we see this fleshy brain, and where his eyeballs are two gun barrels. And so he starts shooting these like flesh bullets out of his eye gun barrels, and she's trying to like deflect them and stuff, but eventually he shoots so much that they pin her to the wall. And then he comes up to her, and he pulls out one of the tumor keys, and he places it near her arm, and then a keyhole shows up in her arm. He sticks it in, turns the key, and her whole arm just rips open in this like really gory, effed up way. And he sticks the key in, and then she wakes up, and she's back in the police station, and the police commissioner and the police chief are, standing over her and like, hey, are you okay? Like, you should get some rest. And she looks at her arm, and the scars are still there, but her arm is no longer like ripped open. So she's kind of wondering like, did that really happen or not? And eventually, she goes down to this other area of the police station where they have the top half of Keyman's head, like his original head. And they scan it, and they're basically scanning through all their databases to try to match up the head with the person who it belongs to. And eventually, Ruka learns that the key man used to be a scientist, and she asks for like all these addresses that he could have been at. She goes and she starts calling all the numbers, but they're all like out of order. So she's like, all right, I'm gonna go look at them in person. So she goes to look at them in person, and as she's doing that, we get two montages. Well, we get three montages actually. We get a montage of her going place to place, driving in her car to different locations and crossing off areas on this map. We get a montage of the police commissioner who has discovered that the key man is somehow related to the man who murdered Ruka's father. And we get a montage of the police chief visiting this weird strip club where several like engineers actually work as dancers and prostitutes. And this scene is just really effed up. So we get engineers that like, we have like one where her breasts are kind of slicing, or like, you know, where her nipples are like mouths. And we have like another one that is basically like, she looks like a half human, half snail. We have another one that's basically just, the body is so deformed that it's like basically a flesh chair kept alive by an IV bag. And there's like another scene that I guess too gross for me to even mention on this channel that happens with that. But basically the police chief gets enamored with one of the engineers, and he wants to have a private session with her in the back. So he goes into the back where she straps him to a chair, and then she gets down and starts performing oral on him. And while this is happening, he sees like in a reflection that the key man is standing behind him. But before he can act, the prostitute bites off his penis, and the key man basically goes and says that I am going to like engineer you. He's going to turn the police chief into one of the engineers. So he pulls out this drill, and he drills off one of the police chief's feet. But before he can do more, the police chief grabs an Uzi that he has tucked into his pants and shoots at the key man. But before he can hit the key man, the prostitute gets in the way and takes the bullets for the key man. And the bullets riddle her to the point where it basically dissects her, or bisects her. It tears her legs from her torso, and she drops to the floor. And then the police chief is able to like rip the straps off, and he tries to start crawling away. And he makes it into the hallway when all of a sudden the engineer prostitute shows up. And because he blew her legs off and she's an engineer, the lower half of her body turns into a weapon. So the lower half of her body turns into this like flesh alligator head and starts attacking him. And it grabs and it rips off one of his arms, the arm that's carrying the gun. And it goes to bite him and kill him. When the police chief grabs his decapitated arm, stuffs it barrel first into the prostitute's alligator crotch legs, and then there's like this vein sticking out of his arm, and he pulls it, which causes his trigger finger to squeeze on the trigger of his gun, and he shoots this prostitute engineer in the cooch and kills her. So then he kills her, and he's just he's kind of like spent. Like there's nothing he can do now. Like he's just like trying to catch his breath. When the key man shows up, sticks the key against his throat, which splits the police chief's head open, and then he puts the key inside. And then all of a sudden we cut to the police chief arriving at the police station. And because of the fact that his arm, his penis, and his legs were blown or eaten off, those have become flesh weapons. So his leg just becomes like a flesh leg. His arm becomes like a flesh sword. Like it's like flesh with like a blade sticking out of it. And then his penis turns into a giant flesh gun that looks like an elephant trunk. It's just like this giant flesh penis that shoots bullets. I'm not making this up. So the cops see him. They obviously see that he's an engineer. So they go to attack him, and he starts shooting at them with this penis gun. And I can't believe that sentence just came out of my mouth. But yeah, he basically murders all of the police squad members before the police commissioner eventually kills him. And the police commissioner gets so angry that he calls a citywide crackdown on all engineers, kill every single one of them. And don't even just kill everyone that you even suspect of being one. And so the cops in all the other precincts go crazy, and they start like a big murder spree, just killing civilians. Meanwhile, Ruka shows up at this apartment building. It's the last address on the list. And while there, she sees like all these locks around the door. And she goes and she touches one of the locks, and all the locks just pop open and fall. And then the door opens, and the key man shows up, and he invites her in, and he sits at this table, and he tells her to sit across from him. He's like, I have a story to tell you. And so she sits down, and he tells the story. And the story is that the man who killed Ruka's father was a police sniper. And he was like the greatest sniper in the world. And there was one moment where he was supposed to kill someone. And before he can pull the trigger, the person held a baby hostage. So he didn't shoot. And the guy ends up shooting him in the leg. And he's forced to retire. And so he resigns and he spends the rest of his life with his family. And it turns out that his family is like in poverty. His son is really, really smart and wants to be like a genetic scientist, but he doesn't have the money to provide that kind of future for his son, that kind of schooling for his son. When eventually someone shows up and offers money to assassinate Ruka's father. And what happens is it turns out that Ruka's father is trying to, he's leading a rally, a protest to against the privatization of the police force. He doesn't want the police force to be privatized. He thinks that that's going to lead to a lot of totalitarian problems. He thinks the police should be kept in check. So it turns out that the police commissioner hired this sniper to kill Ruka's father. And he did for the money. And so he murders Ruka's father. And then the police commissioner murders the sniper, the assassin. And it turns out that the sniper is the key man's father. And he's the son who wanted to be an engineer. He and Ruka both witness the murders of their fathers. And he snaps. And he goes back to his lab where he's doing research on criminals, like all the most popular, craziest serial killers in the world. He has like their genetic samples, and he's been researching all their DNA to see if there's a way he can find out what causes people to become serial killers, and is there a way to make a cure for that? And seeing his father getting assassinated in front of him, he goes crazy. He grabs all the DNA samples and starts injecting them into him. So he's injecting all this DNA of all these crazy criminals. And he snaps even more, climbs on top of the building of his lab and throws himself off and hits the floor. And this is like a long drop. And when he wakes up, he's standing in front of this giant gate. And he thinks, like, am I in hell? Am I dead? And the gate opens, and what looks like the devil, or at least some small person with horns, shows up and looks at him and gives him this jar with liquid and the tumor keys inside, and then closes the gate. And that's when he realizes that he can engineer all these people, and he becomes an engineer himself. And he tells Ruka, like, we should work together. Like, the man who murdered your father is dead, so you can't get revenge on that. But the man who paid for the assassination is still alive, and he's the same man that murdered my father. So you see, the person that we want revenge against is the same person. But this isn't just revenge. Like, with these powers that we have, because remember, she also has the tumor key inside her arm now because of the incident earlier. Because of these powers that we have, we can take over the world. We can make sure that, that the police force gets put in check, and we can rule and, make sure we never get hurt again. And he wants to make an alliance with Ruka. But Ruka ends up just using her sword, cuts him in half, and kills him. And then she drives back to the police station to get her revenge on the police commissioner. And along the way, as she's driving, we get a montage of the cops going crazy and just murdering citizens left and right and enjoying it. They're like giggling. They're getting hard off of this. This is like orgasmic to them. They're just indulging in all this violence that they're creating. And in fact, one of the people that they grab is the bar owner that Ruka has befriended. And they grab her, and she puts up a fight. She's able to kill off some of the police members in pretty brutal fashion. But eventually, she's outnumbered. They grab her, tie her arms and her legs to 4 different police squad cars, and they start driving slowly, just basically pulling at her arms and legs. And Ruka shows up just in time to see her friend get drawn and quartered. Like, just in time to see her friend, her arms and legs just ripped off, and her body like explodes. And she snaps. And her arm mutates into this flesh head almost. It also kind of looks like almost like a crocodile head, or like, just this demonic flesh mouth with razor sharp claws for teeth. And she kills the police members who have killed her friend, and she drives towards the police station. Along the way, she kills more police officers on the way, until eventually she shows up at the police station. While there, she sees the autopsy guy that was seen earlier, and while all the cops were going crazy, he was basically taking in the bodies of all the citizens that were killed, and he was like chopping them into pieces and stuff and making like cakes and desserts out of their body parts. And he shows up and he's made this Gatling gun that fires human fists. So he basically like he pulls the trigger of this gun and it shoots out like a human hand in the shape of a fist, and it punches Ruka. And basically he starts firing more fists and she's like dodging them. And then eventually he shoots a bunch more, and as they're flying, they turn into the shape of basically they start flipping her the bird as they're flying towards her. And the fists stab her into a pillar, and basically she's pinned in place. He shoots more. Like he's like, this is the end for you. Like, the engineer hunter has now become the engineer hunted. And he shoots more of these flipping the bird hands at her. And as they're flying towards her, her demonic flesh arm shoots a tongue at the ceiling. And we get this really weird, like just laughably physics breaking moment where the hands come, the fingers hit the tongue, and then spin around, so that rather than continuing to go forward and stab Ruka, they spin around and change the trajectory so that they aim back at the autopsy guy, and then they stab him and he died. It's just a really just comical scene. But yeah, she's saved. She gets up, climbs up the police station until she comes across the floor that the police commissioner is on, and his little gimp pet has now has swords attached to its arms and legs. So now this gimp amputated creature is like walking on all fours on four swords, on four blades. And it reminds me of one of the enemies from The Suffering. I don't know if anyone's played that game. When did that game came out on? I think the original PS2 and Xbox. It's an old game, but it reminds me of one of the enemies there. But yeah, we get a fight scene between Ruka and this sword amputated gimp. I don't know how to explain it. Yeah, she's fighting this thing, and then eventually she breaks the swords on his arms. So now it only has the swords on his legs, and it starts doing breakdancing to use its sword legs. And she breaks that, and she grabs it, and she throws it at a desk and knocks it out. And now it's her fighting the police commissioner, and he takes these 3 drugs that are attached to the gimp, and he injects one of them. And I guess it's supposed to like beef him up or something. He charges at her with his sword. She charges at him, and they swing at the same time. And it's that cliche like samurai moment where they both swing their swords and they pass each other, and then they like, both freeze, and then only one of them gets stabbed. Well, it turns out that Ruka on her blade is blood, and she has sliced the commissioner. So the commissioner's legs actually fall off. Like she slices legs off. She stands up and she's gonna finish him off, and he's like, no, like I won't be. This won't be the end for me. I'm gonna rule everyone. I'm gonna rule everything. So he takes the final 2 drugs, stabs them to his leg, and what I don't know what exactly it does, but basically the blood that's squirting out of his legs starts gushing even more, and he uses the blood gushing out of his legs as a jetpack to fly around. I'm not kidding. he's jetpacking by his bloody stumps, and he's like flying around the room trying to stab at Ruka with his sword. And then eventually she slices his head off and she kills him. He's dead. His reign as the police commissioner has been ended, and we see the commercial of how the privatized police is a good thing. Like they start showing that commercial again, and then all of a sudden it burns, and then we see Ruka standing outside, and the pet gimp now has machine guns attached to his arms and legs. And Ruka basically is like, she's the new person in charge now. And then we cut to credits. And then during the credits, we see that the key man and this prostitute lady are alive, and they both look normal again. Like they both look human again. They don't really stand out too much, and they basically walk into a crowd of people, and then it says the gore will continue. So apparently maybe this was supposed to have like a sequel at some point, but it never happened. And I mean, this movie came out in 2008, so I guess that's not going to happen. But yeah, that's the movie. That's how it ends. Yes, it is crazy, bizarre, effed up movie with just so much gore and violence and just a lot of craziness that, I mean, you've heard the things I've explained. Like, Ruka using a rocket launcher to rocket herself up onto like a building rooftop. A guy using the blood squirting out of his leg stumps as a jetpack. A dude creating a Gatling gun that fires human fists. There's just so much craziness in this movie, and I'm all for it. I love it. I will say there are some times where I kind of had to look away just because some of the stuff is just really messed up. Like we have scenes where this person is like eating cockroaches and maggots, and it zooms in on the person as they're crunching. We have this other scene with the flesh chair, and it does something to the audience that I don't even want to share, but it's perverse, just really messed up. Again, a lot of violence, really over the top. Like if you thought Hostel was bad, this movie is way, way, way more disturbing when it comes to the gore and stuff. I don't know if I want to say disturbing because it's so over the top that it's like a comedy. It's like a satire. Like if you're a fan of like Ash vs. Evil Dead, you will like this. It's like that. It's just over the top splatter action flick. I will say that there are some things that I felt like it could have done way better. The character of Ruka, the actress did a pretty decent job. It's I think her name is pronounced Aihi Shina. You might know her from Audition by Takashi Miike. That was a pretty good horror movie. But she plays a very stoic character. Ruka is very, very stoic. And the actress did a really good job with that. Like she has no expression whatsoever. Her face is usually just blank. But because of that, we don't really get much like of a personality from her. In fact, she has very few lines in this movie. Like other characters talk way more than her. She's almost, I don't know how to explain it. She's almost a silent protagonist. So we don't really get much with her. So I kind of would have liked to just see more of her personality, just more with her. I will say that I like how they tried to do a RoboCop Starship Troopers with the gory satire-ish commercials. Like they're so over the top they become satire. But I feel like they could have done a better job with the commercials. I feel like they could have placed them in better. Like a better way to segue them in rather than just in between cuts of like different scenes. Like you're transitioning from one scene to another and then you'll have just this commercial. And I feel like you could have done a better job than that. I would have liked more between Ruka and the bartender lady. Like we get just very little of their interactions. I would have liked more so that when the bartender lady got killed, it has more of an impact on us, the audience. Because like that's basically what causes Ruka to become an engineer. I mean, she is technically an engineer when she gets the key inside her, but she's still human. She's still like she hasn't grown any mutations or anything like that. It's not until she sees the death of her friend that she gets mutated. So I would have liked to see more between the two characters so that I can really get that impact when that happens. The action scenes are good for the most part. There are some moments where it's like it zooms in way too close. Like the close-ups are way too close to some of the action scenes that you can't really make out what's going on, and it's just like blood squirting everywhere. I think they did that just because, I mean, this movie is low budget, and this movie was shot in 2 weeks. So for a movie that has a really low budget and shot in 2 weeks, I think it did a pretty good job at what it has to work with. But yeah, I would have liked to see more. But yeah, other than that, I mean, for what it is, this movie is pretty cool. Like, if you like over-the-top splatter movies with action, I mean, this is right up your alley. This reminds me of like 80s, 90s adult anime movies with just like the over-the-top gore and violence and just disturbing visuals. That's pretty much what Tokyo Gore Police is. So yeah, I enjoyed the movie. It's a shock movie. It's not meant to be taken seriously. You can tell that from the very beginning. And just the story is not there. Like the story feels like it's there just for Yoshihiro to indulge in his gory special effects. Like that's what it feels like. Like it's like they basically said like, hey, like you're crazy with your makeup and your special effects, and we want you to do a whole movie to just show off all your skills. And he just basically sat down and wrote a script that fit that. So a script so that he can just show all the crazy stuff he can do with his special effects and things like that. That's what this movie feels like. So the story is its weakest parts, and I'm not going to defend it in any way, but if you just want to see crazy action, over the top gore, and just something that doesn't take itself seriously, this is definitely the movie to check out. But yeah, there you go. There's Tokyo Gore Police. I really wonder if I can get away with this without getting age restricted. I guess we'll find out. But I would have to like hide so much. If you thought that some of my explanations were like just over the top, wait until you actually see them in action. Like really, like just go check out this movie. Like there's no excuse not to. You can watch it for free on Tubi. Go watch it and see how crazy it really is. But yeah, I'm gonna have to at some point do reviews for his other movies, specifically Hell Driver and Mutant Girl Squad. I might even do one for Vampire Girl versus Frankenstein Girl, but definitely Hell Driver and Mutant Girl Squad at some point. But yeah, definitely go check them out. And yeah, there you go. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you guys haven't already, please subscribe and like and all that stuff. And yeah, this is basically not going to be a series that I'm going to upload on a regular basis. It's just more when I get around to doing it and I feel like it and stuff. But this will just basically be movies that I want to do stuff on. It doesn't even have to necessarily be movies. I'll probably be doing some anime OVAs as well. I'm going to try to stay away from TV shows for the most part, just because that's a lot of reviewing that I would have to do, because I don't know, I'm one of those, like, I like to do one video per episode rather than, you know, an entire season or whatever as one video. So I might stay away from TV shows, but we'll check into like OVAs, especially like some multi OVAs. Like I would like to do something on the original Bubblegum Crisis at some point, because that's one of my favorite anime series of all time. So I would love to do something on that. But yeah, anime, movies in general, OVAs, just whatever. That's what this series is going to be. Just stuff that I want to do reviews about. If you guys got any crazy out there movies, let me know. I kind of want to stick to some of the more lesser known stuff. Kind of like I said, like Tokyo Gore Police. I mean, some people will, you know, recognize what this is. Some people probably have never heard of it. So I kind of want to stick to stuff like that. Stuff that's not too popular with, I guess you can say, normies, but stuff like that. So if you got any crazy, weird, unique movies out there that isn't all that popular, let me know. Just leave them in the comments down below. And any suggestions you guys give, I always write them down and I try to get around to at some point. Just to know, I kind of want to stick to like action stuff or just stuff like badass stuff. Like I don't really want to look at romances or just heavy drama or stuff, just because that's not really my thing. But yeah, if you got like crazy comedy, horror, or action, anything like that, let me know and I will definitely check them out at some point. But yeah, once again, there you go, Tokyo Gore Police. Crazy ass movie. I recommend it. If you like old school anime, that's what this feels like. It feels like a live action of an old school anime. If you like over the top gore, horror comedy, action splatter movies, definitely check out Tokyo Gore Police. It's free on Tubi. I don't even think you have to create an account. I don't know. I have an account, but I have a free account. So if you have to create an account to watch it, it's free. But I don't think you even need one. But don't quote me on that. But yeah, check it out. Good movie. I liked it. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the video and hope to see you guys next time. Take care, everybody. Later.